Welcome back to Football Weather. Galen, Clavio, Matt Blaszka joining you once again. It occurs to me, for those who watch on YouTube and Spotify, if you watch the intro to this podcast, you might think it's about sports video games, and it's definitely not. We use sports video game footage so we don't get sued, which happens a lot in the podcasting space these days. But Matt, great to see you, and great to be back here on the show again. We're recording this on Monday. So releasing the morning of Tuesday, the 14th, and it was another eventful week in college football. We're going to talk about the games in a part two and also give our merit poll, but we really need to talk about the coaching situation out there and all of that. Huge news this weekend, seismic news we're going to get to, talk through some of the different aspects of things. But first of all, how are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Yeah, I mean, obviously, really fun weekend for the Indiana fan base, and I encourage all to go check out the Crimson Cast 2-hour episode last night. Good for you. I was long asleep, but it was really a really good listen, talking about obviously the big game. But we'll get into this weekend. But certainly the big news that dropped yesterday is what we're going to focus on and how that really affects what college sports is looking like here, at least college football.
Yeah, it's. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm glad it was an enjoyable podcast that we did on Crimson Cast. But yeah, if you folks want to go check that out, it's on the YouTube channel. It's also out on Spotify and Apple. So check it out. Let us know what you think. We're going to dive into things in a little more granular detail, at least on the coaching front, as it relates more generally to the Penn State opening. And the Crimson Cast episode really focused on the Indiana side of things, but I want to talk about it from the Penn State side. But before we get to that, real quick, just a reminder, we are brought to you by Homefield Apparel, your place to go for the finest in college fashions, the softest fabrics, the coolest designs. Homefield is all over the country right now. They are touring the country, supported by Modelo, as they travel to campuses across this great land of ours. I think they might be up in Michigan this week. So a lot of places that you'll see Homefield Apparel, and if you're out watching your local college football team, you'll probably see some Homefield Apparel there. Use the code HOME23 and get 15% off your first order. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com. Check them out on the socials as well. Matt, let's dive right into it. The news coming down on Sunday. And actually, it's funny because I was boarding my plane flying back from Eugene, and we sat down. I don't know, remember it was before the plane took off or after. I think it might have been right after, but the news breaks that athletic director Pat Kraft fired James Franklin. This was inconceivable 15 days earlier when Penn State had taken a lead in overtime on Oregon, and it looked like they were going to win that top 10 matchup. They were going to be catapulted fully into a serious conversation about who was going to win the college or be in the college football playoff, who were the odds-on favorites to win. I mean, we've seen coaches' tenures unravel relatively quickly, but it's always measured in the span of a season. Right. I don't know that I can remember a situation like this in recent college football where a guy who was in the semifinals, and there were no semifinals before, but imagine a team with one loss, two losses technically because they lost in the Big Ten title game, getting all the way to the CFP semifinal, having your athletic director shell out a huge amount of money to go pry a defensive coordinator away from the biggest rival that you've got, the team that's been standing in your way. Of course, we're talking about Jim Knowles coming from Ohio State. That's supposed to be the missing piece. You start the season, you're in the top 5, and you're leading another top 5 team, and then you lose the game, and then 2 weeks later you're fired. Just a stunning turn of events.
There's no comp for this. In college football. I mean, yeah, this probably happened in the NFL a couple times, maybe even basketball, but not in college football. You've never seen anything like this. The closest comparison, people are talking about Mark Richt, but that's happened over time. Les Miles happened over time. He won a national championship though. But I think, it's interesting kind of happened. We said last week, we didn't think this was going to happen. We said the week before, that's still unlikely, probably going to happen. And it just unraveled quickly. And I told you to go check out, and I'm not sure if you've been really busy, but checking out checking out the post game on Saturday night, because I didn't really watch much because it was the same time as the IU game, so I didn't really check in. But just watching the clips of him after the game, it's like he almost knew it was over. Like that was it. But I'm just going to share something. I think picture for Penn State. So, growing up in this territory, on the fringes of Penn State territory, we didn't really have college football, but a lot of my friends or people I knew were Penn State fans. So, seeing people care about Happy Valley as much as they do, as my family now lives there, it's unbelievable. So what I did, I texted a couple people asking their thoughts, and the consistent thing was relief, surprise, and a big wow. Like, I can't believe they actually are going to buy out the $49 million. But what people don't really understand, I don't think, is that this didn't happen overnight. This is a 4-year build towards that contract extension he got a couple of years ago. And they got the semifinal last year, but people didn't really, grab onto that. They beat SMU, they beat Boise State, which aren't seen as blue blood programs, and they lost Notre Dame. And then this year they lose to, Oregon, and then UCI happens, and Northwestern happens, and suddenly there's no path forward, and it's over. And the fan base is ready to check out. As the next couple of weeks they have Iowa, Ohio State, and Indiana. So there really wasn't a comeback for him to come back and be coaching this team, it seemed like, especially after Aller got hurt too. I think that was certainly maybe one of the factors for this. So how they got to the decision, I'm sure Kraft said, you know what, I can't have this happen for the next 6 weeks of a fan base that's already irate. I have to move forward. Yeah. Now, is this a great job? Yes. I don't think there's any question it's a great job. There is the candidate out there, which I've heard a little bit about there, Matt Rhule, and he seems like the perfect candidate. He dodged the question today quite a bit. But one thing they got to be really careful with here is they don't want to become Nebraska and become relevant. And making the right hire is really important here. It's a fertile ground. They have a great connection. You have to have a connection to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, the DMV, to really bring back the energy that hasn't existed there, even though players grow up wanting to play for Penn State in that area. So from a micro standpoint of Penn State, yes, this is really big, but from a really big standpoint from college football, I think they did it at the right time. I've been back and forth all day. We're seeing Florida State, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Auburn all sitting there wanting to do the same thing. And I wonder if this makes those schools go quicker.
You may be right. I mean, I think you brought up the toxicity that was likely to take hold because of not just Aller being out, but everything else that we saw disintegrate over the course of the last couple of weeks. I mean, losing to UCLA. And yeah, I know UCLA went and beat Michigan State at Michigan State. I got news for you all. Michigan State may be firing their coach at some point here soon too. Like, that's not a good comp. But then losing at home to Northwestern, that's just baffling. And it points to like this total systems failure, which I want to come back to in a second. But when you think about the timing, it is jarring. It's a lot of money. You're going to have to spend the money anyway. So once you were willing to spend the money, it becomes a question of, well, do you do it now or do you do it later? I do think that Penn State's kind of an interesting case because you mentioned it being a great job. And yet it's got kind of two things going against it right now. It is a program that has clearly not been able to live up to the standards of the other big programs that were already in the Big Ten. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan have both kept Penn State at arm's length pretty much this entire last 7 or 8 years, and maybe even going back further than that. But Penn State's also in this spot where they had the huge break from the Paterno, era. And that obscured the reality that Penn State hasn't won a national title since 1986. And yet, as we've seen at other universities where you have these long-standing figures that become iconic within the coaching ranks, there's an identity that slowly dissipates over time where the trappings of everything that has been built up around that identity are still there. But the core of the program isn't necessarily as strong as it appears to be from outside. And when I think about Penn State, I think about a team that, from a statistical perspective, is probably better than a Wisconsin if you take the last 10 years. But in terms of results that matter to a program like that, it hasn't been too terribly different. And that's got to be concerning. And if I'm Pat Kraft in this case, it's not just about, I think he said today, like making this the best place to coach and play college football in the country, or some version of that. Like, there's got to be a reality check that not only have we not been that, it's almost been papered over that by not getting over the hump, you think you're a lot closer than you actually are. And look, over the last 5 years, Penn State's 11th nationally in average recruiting ranking. And I mean, nobody's going to toss that aside. They've been better than a lot of teams, but they're outside the top 10. And I don't think that's how Penn State views itself. Penn State views itself as like a top 5 program in college football, and they're not. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a great job, but I think if that's really what they want to get to, it's not just about finding a good solution. It's not just about avoiding the toxicity right now. It's about really evaluating what has been the problem. And the idea that it's all been James Franklin and Franklin's inability to get the job done in key moments, that may be true. It may also be that there is just a talent deficit that they can't overcome. And now you're in an era, and I guess this is the point I'm trying to ultimately get to. I feel like Penn State is going to be reaching for a solution that would have worked 10 to 15 years ago with this. I don't know that that's what you can do now, because I think what's got to be the most concerning for Penn State is, with all this new financial reality and with the transfer portal and with NIL and everything else, the door has been swung wide open for programs to go accrue the right talent, have the right people in place, and go win things and get to the college football playoff. Penn State did that, but not to their satisfaction. And as you mentioned, they kind of had the easiest path to the semifinals of any of the teams that got there. So now you're firing Franklin. You're going to lose a ton of recruits. What's the structure and the setup that they're going to create that's going to actually allow them to compete against the teams that have started to thrive in this era, that are usurpers to that top 5, top 10 period? And this is where you throw in Indiana. It's where you throw in Texas Tech. It's where you throw in Ole Miss. It's where you throw in Texas A&M. And the idea that the name brand of Penn State, good of a job, great of a job as it might be, isn't just going to be the automatic allure for coaches at other places who can do a lot of the same things and maybe even slightly better things with less of the obstacles that you're likely going to come across as the Penn State head coach from a political perspective.
You hit on a really good point there. Is the game has changed, right? It's no longer build. You're bringing a guy that can win in year 1, year 2 if you do it correctly. Bring in the right person, and that's going to be a lot more challenging this year. And we'll talk about this here in a second, because of the jobs that are already open and the jobs are going to come open. So Pat Kraft he's got a head start, which I think that maybe that was part of his equation. It's already at some cost. I'm going to be paying the $49 million. Franklin might get one of these jobs that comes open anyway. Hard to say, hard not. I don't know. But it puts him in a spot where he can do a lot of evaluation now and get moving on maybe a prospect. If it's not Matt Rhule, or if it's somebody else, Manny Diaz has been rumored there. He was at Penn State for a while. He's doing really well at Duke. To get in front of this and figure out and go to donors and ask them, hey, maybe you don't want to ask the donors, but certainly ask people, what do you think we need to do, or figure out what the pitfalls are. They're currently having a $700 million renovation of their stadium. So they're investing. That's what Franklin wanted, investment in more of those areas. Penn State has never really been ahead of the game in those areas. They are trying to almost catch up. They're weirdly behind schools that have been investing in football forever, which is really hard to do when we are Penn State football for the last 40 years. So where do they go next is obviously we'll see what happens to them. It's going to be really interesting what in this larger landscape of, now I'm sure you have some thoughts here too, of what happens with these buyouts, right? We've already seen a couple. We're going to see a couple more happen. Are schools going to rip the Band-Aid off now and go forward and say, you know what, we don't need to offer these 7-year contracts because it doesn't really matter what the recruiting class is 5 years from now. Let's offer them 3 to 4 years of guaranteed money. And that's it. And you coach that contract and that's it. There's no buyouts. We'll go forward this way. That way, when he's his last year, it's either put up or shut up time. And if he's not good, see it. Then you go to the next coaching year. You're not owing, or Franklin's on a line item for the next 7 more years, whatever it is, wow. A line item for the next 7 years. So this is an inflection point in college football, coaching, and certainly for the agents of how they're going to structure these contracts going forward.
And I mean, some people have pointed out, I mean, Front Office Sports had an article today. There's mitigation language in almost all of these contracts. Although hilariously not in Billy Napier's contract in Florida. There is no mitigation language. But that's a great point in the macro. Like that, and I've made this point before, I think either on this show or on Crimson Cast, but the level of insane irresponsibility that has been demonstrated by a lot of these ADs and presidents and boards of trustees at public institutions,
state universities,
state private school, hell, go ahead,
do what you want,
but you know, for Texas A&M, which last I checked was a public institution, to spend what $76 million on a buyout of Jimbo Fisher, for Penn State to spend somewhere between 49 and 56 million in a buyout. And look, you can say there's mitigation language. I'd like to note when Thad Matta got fired by Ohio State, he had mitigation language in his contract. I think it was like 6 years that he interviewed for jobs and then ended up not taking them.
That's all you got to do.
That's all you got to do. Like the idea that you're automatically going to get that money back, no. But the level of irresponsibility, especially at a time when you're going to Congress and claiming that you're broke and that you need an antitrust exception and you need like bailouts and you need protections against play. I mean, it looks so bad, and it is bad. And it's like, where's the accountability? And look, Pat Kraft didn't sign this contract, I don't think.
No, he didn't.
So it's not even his mess, but this happens all over the place. And you're right in one way, I think, in that at some point, schools are going to have to go the route of saying, we're not going to give you a buyout. We are going to guarantee your contract. That's essentially, though, what a buyout is. It's just you're going to have to do it for less time.
Fewer years, yeah.
So I don't know if even that's the answer, because you also have the other impact of rev share, which is eating into athletics budgets. You've only got so much money you can ask donors for. And eventually you realize that there's probably a reason why coaches shouldn't make this much money if you don't know for sure that what they're doing is going to result in success for your team. And just throwing money at guys without a demonstration of success, that's kind of where I would worry if I'm Penn State. You can say, oh, well, they'll go hire Matt Rhule. And again, I mean, Matt Rhule, he had some good seasons at Temple. He led a nice rebuild at Baylor. Are you sure that guy is going to win you titles? I ask myself this. Why, if I have a nice big contract, a nice long-term contract at a place that I'm having success, why would I leave to go to a school that just had the head coach lead the team to the second to last game of the year, lose on a last drive,
last play,
essentially,
and
choose to pay $56 million to fire him in the middle of the season? Like, why would I want to walk into that situation? That to me, if all you care about is money, okay, sure. But that's why you don't want that type of a coach. You want a coach that's going in and is going to create a program. What about the Penn State situation, good of a job as it might be, leads you to believe, oh, that's a stable place that I'd really like to go? It leads me back to what I wanted to ask you earlier, which is, what is your theory on what the hell went wrong at Penn State this year? Because again, they were so close last year, and we joked about how they hadn't really beaten anybody and they didn't look that great in games, and that was a much bigger warning sign than we thought. But they looked really good against a really good Oregon team, and then they lose that game. For the bottom to fall out so severely, I haven't read any postmortems that really explain this, but it's almost inconceivable to me that things turned that sour that quickly. There had to have been something else going on.
Something just didn't click because they brought in Knowles, highest paid defensive coordinator, I believe, right, in the country this year. So they brought in all these pieces. They were probably the most expensive roster outside of Texas Tech to come back for this season. And it makes you wonder if there was something more going on in the offseason, or there wasn't the same support, or something. It just doesn't add up, because if you're bringing back basically the same roster, you added receivers, and your defense was essentially the same as last year for a team that went 13-3, lost to Ohio State by 3 points last year, and had the chance to tie that game late. and then lost to Oregon. And you were at that game. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. They were toe to toe with them pretty much all night in that game, and then lost to Notre Dame. Like they were right there all 3 times, and to lose the way they did, the UCLA game, sure, but the Northwestern game, I mean, to lose at home like that was it that bad that the players just weren't as good, or were they not as prepared, or did Franklin just? I don't want to say Franklin mailed in. It just seems like something was off from the very start. And like we said, we've never seen this before, so it's really difficult to really pontificate. And maybe we'll get, you said, a post-mortem, but something was just off from the very first game of the season when they were leading FIU 10-0 at halftime. Like FIU is one of the worst programs in the country this year, right? They're not very good. So I'm curious to hear about what happened, but there had to be some internal things. I mean, for Tom Allen just to get up and leave, or kicked out, or whatever, or left, I don't know what happened there, but they were pretty good defensively last year for that to happen, right? Yeah. So I'm lost with you. I don't know. It doesn't make sense with the talent they have. They have a lot more talent than UCLA, and sure as heck a lot more than Northwestern for that to happen, right? Back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
So, and maybe Oregon, it could be very similar last year with the IU after they done. And maybe that was it. They lost that Oregon game, and that was it. And they folded. They didn't have the wherewithal to come back off the mat, and maybe that's it.
Maybe that's it. It's hard. I mean, I'll be fascinated to actually get the rundown of what that looks like when we finally hear about it, because I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point. But yeah, man, it's wild time. So Penn State's open, and we know other jobs are going to come open as well. It's going to be a crazy landscape. And what's fascinating about it right now is that there's a ton of guys in coaching jobs that just can't feel safe. There's also a ton of guys who are going to be trying to leverage themselves into what they perceive as better positions. And when you look up and down the rankings right now, what I think is fascinating is, I think pretty much everybody in what is the current top 9 of the college polls is probably not going anywhere. I mean, there's been some questions about would Kurt Cignetti take the Penn State job. You can listen to my commentary on Crimson Cast for why I don't think that he's going to do that. Who knows? But I would really be surprised. But you start getting past that, and you got some different cases here, because in addition to what's already opened, it's almost certain that Florida is going to open. It's almost certain that you're going to get Wisconsin open.
I can't believe he was not fine after that home loss. I'm sorry. That was something, but go ahead.
To lose by that amount to Iowa is at home is pretty jarring. And I mean, there's a couple other teams we could throw in there. Auburn, I think, as unfair as that game was for them against Georgia, is another one. And then you look around the landscape and you ask yourself, is Brian Kelly really going to stick around LSU when they lose the 2 or 3 additional games that they look almost certain to lose this year?
Yeah.
Are we going to see a situation where, I think Georgia Tech's probably looking at a really big likelihood that they're going to lose their coach. I think you've got a situation where Vanderbilt is probably going to lose their coach. There's so many chess pieces to move. What are you most intrigued by, though, going in and knowing that the cycle has started before, I guess technically today was Columbus Day, but like essentially before Columbus Day, we're already in this state. And this is essentially how it's going to be in college football, it feels like, moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is the new normal. Like, they're not going to wait anymore if they don't have to. I think when I text you, I think it was the 4th straight week we had somebody get fired. And sorry, Trent Dilfer, we're not talking about your school today, or Trent Bry, who got a really raw deal with Oregon State. I mean, they don't have a conference, and they don't. I mean, they're in a really tough spot. But I think you're right. I think this is what we're going to see going forward, because I think the contract's going to change, and I think they're already going to put this in there. They're already going to say, I'm not committing to this for 7 years now. Like you said, though, there is, out of the top 20 teams, who's really available at this point? Maybe Clark Lee from Vanderbilt maybe gets something in there. I am intrigued by Brian Kelly. He never fit at LSU. Now, is there a match with Penn State? He coached at Notre Dame. He coached at Cincinnati, so he has some Midwest ties. He is also a little bit older as well. Is that a fit? I don't know. But certainly it's a really curious time to see what is going to happen over the next couple of weeks. I'm sure now, after this Penn State domino has fallen, I can't imagine Florida State holds on much longer, especially after losing to Pitt. And now Florida, they got the cocktail party coming up. They have a bye week after this. So maybe they're waiting for the bye week to get everything aligned. So to give the players some time to practice. But as kind of you noted here, I think the next 4 to 6 weeks as we finish with the regular season is going to be really interesting as these different posturing. We're going to start seeing contract extensions and really where these schools go. I'm really curious to see who signs that first contract and what it looks like. And maybe it is James Franklin. Maybe he ends up somewhere else because he's still a young guy. I can't just see him just walking off. He loves coaching, it seems like, from what we've read and heard. But I'm really curious to see where this next round goes and where this cycle goes, because there aren't those names out there that you saw in 2021 where we saw Kelly move, or in 2023 when Saban retired and all those guys kind of were chess pieces of renegotiating their contracts. We're just not going to see that this year because there's just not those guys available.
Well, it's fascinating as all of this rotates around, because ultimately the one thing that is really fascinating, and it was brought up in that piece that you sent me, and it's something I've seen brought up by a couple of other people. If you're Penn State, so you've lost a bunch of recruits today, which is,
expected.
Happen. I mean, these guys are generally coming to play for the coach and the coaching staff. They're not coming to play for the team specifically. National Signing Day, I think, is what, December 3rd?
3rd to 5th, yeah.
I don't know if there's any coaches that would leave. I can't imagine that there would be coaches that would leave a playoff team or a team that could be selected for the playoff to go take a new job somewhere else. And if you're Penn State, you're going to need to get somebody in place at least a week before signing day so that you can give yourself a chance to sign some players.
Right.
And now you've got one transfer portal window after that, so you've got even less time to make alterations to your roster. You've got to hit the ground running. And so for Penn State, it's funny because the firing happens, people freak out about, who's it going to be, this or that, and people expect things they're not going to get. Like, you're not going to get denials. You're not going to. Matt Rhule,
Freeman.
Freeman, but Rhule's out there, and everybody's like, he never denied that he's interested. Like, what the hell is he supposed to say? Like, really?
Right, yeah.
And even if he gave a denial, everybody plays the Saban clips from when he's the Dolphins head coach. Right. They mean nothing. But what I do think is interesting is if you're Penn State and you're like, okay, who could we legitimately get, given that we probably can't get any playoff coaches? You got Matt Rhule, you've got Manny Diaz, you've got teams like that. And I think for a lot of teams that are going to be in a position where they need to hire somebody, like the idea that you would wait until the 20th of December when a prospective playoff coach might lose in the first round before naming that person the head coach, like that just seems really implausible. Like you're in this weird spot right now with the calendar where you're almost handcuffed to having to go with an option that's not coaching one of those teams, because you don't really have a lot of you can't take the risk. What if that coach wins a playoff game and he has a change of heart at the last second? Or there's so many different ways that could go. I think it's a really weird aspect to this that hasn't been talked about much yet.
I was just thinking that too, because the quarterfinals is January 1. So let's just play this out, and this for our IU friends here. If they go 12-0, they're probably going to have a bye regardless if they win or lose. So their last game would be at worst January 1st. The portal opens the 2nd.
Yeah.
If they win that game, then you're talking January 9th. Right? The calendar does not line up.
And the portal, when does the transfer portal close?
The 16th. Now I know there's some rules because if the coach leaves and but that doesn't help the new team. That helps, I believe, the old team. So it's just again, this calendar's been a mess for a long time, and it's only worse. It's only going to get worse when the final. I think next year the championship's the 27th or 20, whatever. It's really late, right, in January. But to your point, National Signing Day is before Conference Championship Saturday, which again, whoever did that, that's probably the coaches agreed to this. That's a really bad decision on their part. Is really going to cause issues. So like the last day of the regular season is November 30th or right around there, right? You're going to see a lot of movement that week or right before that for hiring, because they're going to have to get in there. talk people to come back or leave or whatever it's going to be within those like 4 or 5 days. It's going to be a sprint for one of those things, right?
The last day is the 29th. The Friday's the 28th of November. Saturday's the 29th. And then you got conference championships a week later. It's a fascinating window, and I keep coming back to this idea of how timing generally has worked historically, and how coach movement works historically.
Yep.
So now you've got a bunch of things lined up. Anybody that's got a coach that might be on the move, who has the financial resources, now knows they got to get things sewed up a lot earlier than the end of the season. But now they've got time to do it. And then any team that's looking for a coach, you're basically going to have to tell your fan base, unless you get the extraordinary situation of a coach leaving a program that's going to a playoff game because it gives them a better opportunity elsewhere. You're going to have let's take Alex Golesh at USF.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, if they end up being the
Group of 5 team,
Group of 5 rep, I mean, that would be a brutal outcome for them. But imagine him leaving for Florida before the first playoff game, because that's the way the timing works. Right. I mean, that's I'm sure somebody maybe looked at this and thought, hey, we should maybe not do it that way. But it actually does help retention, I think, a lot more for guys that are already in spots. But it also makes it hard for overachievers in that lower level to really bump up, unless they're willing to really make themselves look like horrific people in the media because they walked away from a team that was in the college football playoff.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. And so for Alex Golesh example, right? And I don't know if you saw that game on Friday. They were awesome after that first quarter.
Yeah.
For him, like, why with this cycle, all the jobs are going to open. He'll be a coach somewhere, or take interviews while he's preparing. Like, and you can't have him coach the game at that point. Like, that's not. It's you're in a really tough spot, and maybe it's something like that will help you have this calendar change eventually, because you just can't have this. Like, I know in 2021, Brian Kelly left Notre Dame. Now, they were ranked number 5 at the time. They weren't in the playoff, but one loss in the championship weekend, Notre Dame would have been in, and Brian Kelly would have left the playoff team, right? It's a totally different situation.
And I'll note, everybody, talk about guys with great Q ratings.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a guy to do that, Brian Kelly would have been the one that you would have said, yeah, that seems like exactly what he would do.
Right. Yeah. So, but like most guys, I don't think would do that. They're not going to, I don't think would leave their players. But for Golesh, I would understand if he did. Like, it makes sense for a career move for him. It's the perfect cycle. Like last year, if it happened, no chance. There was no jobs. This year, there's 6 of them. Like, you're not going to walk away from that opportunity. And I no one can blame him for that, but it really stinks for those kids in the school and all that buildup, because they have been really good this year, and they deserve it if they are the team.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be worth keeping an eye on, obviously, as we wind our way through this. There's so much to go. Like, nothing's getting decided on any of these things. It's just kind of wild that we're already having these conversations, and we'll probably continue to talk about it. And we got to keep an eye on a bunch of different schools now. We left maybe the biggest one outside of Penn State when we talked earlier, which is Florida State, who went from obviously Mike Norvell has not been fired yet, but going from beating Alabama in front of your home crowd in the first week of the season to now multiple losses in the ACC.
3.
Yeah, and I mean, that's I don't know what I think we kind of know what they do. 3 losses in a row. And while the rest of their schedule is pretty easy, a 9-3 finish, well, that's, I think, what you and I predicted.
We did. Yeah.
That's a bitter pill to swallow for a fan base that really thought they had jumped out of the coffin, and we're back and fully moving again.
I think that, especially the way it broke, if they would have lost to Bama and then finished 9-3, I don't think anybody would. I think they would have been fine. But then, and losing to Virginia, I was like, okay, that happens, tough one. But the way they looked against Miami, it's like, how did Alabama lose this team? And then I watched a little bit of that Pitt game on Saturday, and Pitt just looked, they were like better all day. And so to lose that, and they lost 2 home games. I mean, that makes it even worse.
Yeah, you still got to go to Clemson. You still got to go to Florida. You got to go to NC State, which they should win that, but you never know. Yeah, it's wild. And so that's another job that might come open.
Yeah.
But again, you're talking about a team
that's $50 million, right? That one.
Yeah, that's a big buyout, and that's the thing. And this is where I think to wrap it up on the Penn State front, if they, most athletic directors, they'll make that move knowing that they've got somebody that, if all else failed, would still be a good hire, at least in the back of their minds. Now, they may not have had the conversations about it. If they really just made the move to avoid the toxicity, well, the problem you run into there is, what if the next hire brings more toxicity? Because you can really only do that financial deal once, unless you are like Texas A&M or some team with just an unlimited amount of money. But at some point, you really run the risk of backing yourself into a corner you can't get out of, and that is going to be the fascinating thing with all of these schools, because you want coaches that will take you to the level that you think you need to be at, which is the college football playoff. Now, there's nothing that, I mean, last year there were a very small number of coaches prior to that year had been to the college football playoff. There's more now, but like, hypothetically, if Florida State's like, oh, we're going to fire Mike Norvell, who are you going to hire? Rhett Lashlee. Why? Well, he's been to the playoff. Was that really going to move the needle?
Right.
Probably not. So you've got a smaller pool than you think you do. And then if you don't go that direction, you're essentially having to justify why you hired the person that you hired. And that is really slippery territory for any athletic director.
100%. So it's $53.8 million at the end of the season for Norvell. So
that all? Yeah.
Yeah. So who's next for you? I'm going to go Wisconsin. I'm going to go Wisconsin's next. I don't think you can keep going this route. I mean, they're not even competitive.
I mean, I would say yes, but here's the thing. If you were going to do it, wouldn't you have done it today? Because they play Ohio State next week. I got a sneaking suspicion they're not going to win that game. And then they got to go to Oregon. Now, maybe it could be that they're going to try to do that. So they play those two games, and then they have a bye, and then they get Washington at home. So maybe they're holding off until then so that they can hire a coach, give him 2 weeks to install. You get a home game. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
A bump, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that he's the next one fired. That doesn't mean I don't think he's going to get fired. But I don't think that he's the next one fired simply because of that timing. As far as the next one, I mean, if I had to wager, and again, the fact that we didn't see anybody else get fired this week, maybe the answer is, I don't know. I mean, is it Hugh Freeze, perhaps?
Yeah.
I mean, Freeze has lost 3 in a row. Their offense looks stuck in the mud. They play Missouri at home next week. They're probably going to lose that game. And then they have a little bit of a soft spot because they have Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Mercer over the course of 4 games. You almost don't want to let him get to that stretch of games.
Right.
Because you don't want – I mean, I don't think it's going to matter one way or the other there. Maybe that's the answer. And simply because their schedule lines up in a way where the best time to do it is at a different time than when Wisconsin can do it. I don't know. I got to think through some of the other options. Because it's like maybe these teams are waiting until the end, but I think this is where the timing around National Signing Day becomes really fascinating because, and this is to some degree, I think where the Penn State thing, as jarring as it was, it is smart because at least if you line up behind the scenes who you're going to bring in and can have that person talk to recruits and say, hey, I'm actually going to be going there. Why don't we get you coordinated behind us? Maybe that is the way to do it. Because at this point, if you get into November and, the closer you get, the cupboard is very bare, that does create a gap that's hard to fill. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess, and for the Franklin thing, just again, one more. If for somehow he beat 2 of the 3, Iowa, Indiana, and Ohio State, okay, now what do you do? Because he just won 2 pretty good games, right? So you're like, let's just pull the cord now because we don't want that scenario happening. We want to just be done with this. Let somebody else coach those games. We have a backup quarterback. We're probably not going to win anyway, but you don't want that chance of somehow they get resurrected and win a couple more games against good teams.
Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the games that happened this weekend. We'll give you the merit poll, and then we'll preview what's going on next week. I said we were going to do 2 episodes. We'll just do 1 larger episode. It's easier that way on me. That way I don't have to edit more. Anyway, we'll be right back after this.
Hoosier Nation, want a smarter take on IU sports? Then check out Crimson Cast. your go-to podcast for Indiana football, basketball, and beyond. Hosts Galen, Clavio, and Scott Caulfield bring you game previews, instant reactions, history, and context to make Indiana sports come alive. From the biggest moments on the field to the storylines shaping the future, Crimson Cast keeps you informed and connected. And after years of saying bring back the Bison, IU actually did it. So if IU listens to Crimson Cast, maybe you should too. Just search Crimson Cast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube.
Back here on Football Weather, Galen, Clavio, Matt Blaszka. Great to have you folks joining us. As always, it's probably Tuesday morning that you're listening to this, or sometime Tuesday afternoon, but we certainly appreciate it. Matt, let's dive into the results from this past week. We would be remiss if we didn't start with the game that I was at, as the Indiana Hoosiers pull off their biggest road win in program history, 30-20. They win at Oregon. I want to hear from you first what it looked like on television and what your impressions were. I'll give mine as well, obviously, but I want to start with you.
I was impressed. I think I picked Oregon to win. I believe you did as well. So certainly, and there would have been no shame losing that game to Oregon at Oregon, but to physically dominate the game from start to finish was impressive. The first play of the game was a sack. In Dante Moore, it looked really good the first 5 weeks. I was really impressed with the defensive effort. And I kept thinking about this. I was like, the two big games they had this year, Illinois and Oregon, they gave up 2 broken plays for touchdowns. Otherwise, it's been field goals and the interception, for a touchdown for Oregon. That's been it for those 2 games. So while the offense, yes, that's a good Oregon defense too. And they obviously, that drive after the interception was awesome. I mean, just an incredible march on the field, taking 6 or 7 minutes. It was truly an impressive victory. I was really impressed from start to finish, just how prepared they looked in the trenches. I mean, I did not expect them to dominate in the trenches. Maybe it just didn't seem like – it seemed like they could compete, but I wasn't sure they could go for 4 quarters. And that score of 30-20, certainly it's a 2-score game. It could have been a 3-score game. I mean, that's how much IU looked better in that situation. They looked comfortable. I think the Iowa game helped, certainly going into a really tough atmosphere. Obviously, you can hear the noise, obviously, through the TV, and I think you talked about a little bit on your podcast how loud it was. But certainly, you looked at that game and you walked away. IU is a top 5 team in the country, and there's really no reason to doubt this team anymore. No more schedule talk, none of that. This is a really good football team.
Yeah, it was really impressive in person, and I think what stood out the most was IU was not just a physical equal to Oregon in this game, but oftentimes imposed their will on Oregon. I mean, especially, they had nobody to match up with Elijah Surratt. They had nobody that could really stop the Indiana defensive front 7.
No.
And that was, I expected if Indiana was going to win, they were going to have to get a really good defensive performance. They got a great defensive performance, and they did it in a way that just choked off an offense that does not get choked off. I mean, go look at the scores that Oregon posted last year. Go look at what they've done offensively this year up until that game. The fact that, again, you take that pick 6 off the board and Oregon scored 13 points on offense the whole game. I mean, that's wild. In Autzen, no less.
Yeah.
That is an accomplishment, something I never thought I'd see out of teams wearing Indiana uniforms. But I think that's the point, is that what they've built on defense is a defense that can go up with anybody in the country right now. And that's going to be fascinating to watch the rest of the way. And look, I still think Oregon's a very good team. I'm really finding it fascinating that ultimately Oregon is in great shape the rest of the way to make the playoff. They've got a couple of potential slight trip-up games, but they're in really good shape. And then Indiana is as well. And, these are 2 of the 3 teams out of the conference, and we'll talk about the other one in the next game that we talk about, that feel like the odds-on favorite to go get playoff bids right now. And it was interesting that Indiana winning this game, I mean, that is essentially the best win in college football at this point. We've talked about it was Alabama at Georgia. That looks less impressive. Or it was Georgia at Tennessee. That looks a lot less impressive now. Yeah. But this is a game I have a hard time seeing somebody topping this unless the truly unexpected happens and Ohio State loses at home. This is a tougher place, as we talked about, to play and win than Ohio Stadium has been, not
Yep.
by a whole lot, by one game over the course of the last several years. So Indiana's got that. That's going to be hard to take away from them as we go down the stretch.
Yeah, we've seen the two longest home winning streaks go down, Georgia losing and now Oregon losing. And what's interesting, you could argue IU has the best 2 wins of the year, the way they dismantled Illinois at home and this win on the road at Oregon, all in a 4-week stretch here, right? So, and like you said, we have Oregon and Indiana have positioned themselves really well. The schedule lightens up. Certainly the Penn State thing is certainly helping. Not helping, but certainly does not look like as big of a tough game for both Indiana and Ohio State. We'll talk about here in a second. Yeah. But now for the Big Ten, it's is there a fourth team? I guess fourth team.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second because we've had some new entrants into the arena on that. Yeah. But Ohio State, as you mentioned, 34-16, they win at Illinois. This was a weird game. There's if you folks haven't checked out Parker Fleming's Twitter account, he does a great job. He tweets out post-game winning, or actually he does success rate, end of game success rate, which tracks basically like you take a lot of the noise out of the equation for many of the games, and you get a sense of who did well. Illinois, actually, you could make an argument, outplayed Ohio State, especially offensively in this game. And, you get to post-game win expectancy, and Ohio State certainly should have won. But statistically speaking, Ohio State outrushed Illinois, but Illinois significantly outthrew Ohio State. They could not finish when they needed to finish, and they really couldn't stop Ohio State when they needed to. And the 3 turnovers that Ohio State forced were the killer. But, this is what Ohio State does. They can get you in a headlock and just not let you out. But it's a bit harsh on Illinois that they fall out of the rankings losing this game, given A, how good Ohio State is, and B, that they didn't play nearly as badly as the final score indicated in this one.
They were competitive. I mean, Ohio State's just better. I mean, on both fronts. Yeah, the 3 turnovers certainly hurt that whole game. The punter catching the ball and kneeing. I mean, that's just unfortunate for Illinois there. I don't want to say I was more impressed by Illinois, but I was certainly it was good to see them kind of rebound from the Indiana games. I was like, oh, are they really going to be able to keep up with? And they did, but they just could never get past that arm's length score. Like Ohio State just kept them just enough the entire game. Yep. And Ohio State didn't have to do much, it seemed like. It seemed like they were just the better team. They finally gave up their first red zone touchdown of the year, which is game 6, which that hasn't happened, I think, in 25 years. Their defense is really good. I mean, they're really good. They're top 5 defense, if not the best defense in the country. So it'll be curious to see how they go forward because they're not going to see anybody until Michigan.
Other games, Ole Miss struggles at home against Washington State, 24-21. They need a score in the fourth quarter to they didn't even ice it away. They won by 3 points. That's an inexcusable game.
No, it's bad.
And the fact that they're still ranked as highly as they're ranked is inexcusable. I'm sorry. That is it's a game that any Big Ten team ranked in the top 10 has that game, and they are getting rightfully punished by the voters, and somehow Ole Miss was just allowed to skate on this one. I was baffled by it.
Yeah, and so I actually turned this on for a little bit just because I was curious. I think it was maybe 14-10 or whatever, something like that. It was a close game. I'm like, how is this happening? And Ole Miss just did not look good at all. And maybe they're looking ahead, but yeah, you're right. If this happens in the Big Ten, it's like, let's unrank them. They're not that good. But yeah, this is a really bad close win for Ole Miss, and hopefully it's just a blip on their radar. But it was a tough watch for me when I checked in.
Texas A&M 34, Florida 17. Can I just say Florida's 2-4? Can we stop pretending they're a good team? Are we allowed to do that at this point?
But they beat Texas last week,
right? Yeah, right.
Which we said they're going to win one of these games, and that was the one they won.
Exactly. A&M.
They're good. I mean, they're good.
They're a legitimately good team, and that's a team that has put it together in a way that they never could under Jimbo Fisher. Mike Elko deserves a ton of credit. Texas beats Oklahoma 23-6. We questioned Oklahoma a little bit earlier on. We were impressed with home wins. They had a not great John Mateer in this game. 3 interceptions. Arch Manning had a really efficient game. I hesitate to call it a great game, but he didn't really need to be great because they got a great running game out of Quintrevian Wisner and Arch Manning himself, and their defense just looked awesome in this game.
Yeah, Manning looked better. So if that's where if that's the baseline now, I hope he does get better. I mean, you don't want to see a kid struggle like he has been struggling, but certainly they needed that win to keep their season alive. And a hurt Mateer certainly factored in. He did not. He looked off the entire game from at least. Again, it was the same time as the IU game, so I was going back. I was having on two screens. He looked off. Something was just not right. Like I almost rushed it back too quickly, but I know they wanted him for that game. But the defense held strong. I mean, it was 6-3 for a large portion, 10-6 then for a little bit. But I mean, the defense played really well for Oklahoma. So
it's one of those, yeah. What you want teams to do what they did, which is try your best to win the game. I do think in terms of their playoff hopes, they probably should have just sat Mateer in this game. Because if you lose to Texas without John Mateer playing, people will say for the rest of the season, well, they lost, but Mateer wasn't playing. So you can't really punish them for that.
Yeah.
But they had him out there. Now, they'll still probably get some grace from it, but it does eliminate some of the margin of error that Oklahoma had.
Right.
Because they've still got games coming up against Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Mizzou, and LSU. That's their 5 to close the season. And now they can maybe lose 2 of them. And that's it. They might even not even be able to lose 2 of them. It's going to depend on how everything else plays out with that team. But Texas definitely needed that win. I don't know if Texas are they legitimately still in the race for the playoff? I guess that's a team I don't think can lose again at this point.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean, if they lose at Georgia, maybe, but then are they going to turn around and win against Texas A&M at home? It's a question mark.
Right. I mean, their schedule does not. It lines up for them to play themselves in, but are they going to win both those games? Yeah, they have to play better than they did this week against a certainly down team or down Oklahoma squad.
Alabama 27, Mizzou 24.
This was a fun one.
It was a fun game, hard-fought game. I mean, Missouri outgained Alabama in this game overall, not by a whole lot, by 4 yards. But it kind of felt like the 2 interceptions were a little more than they could overcome. And Alabama, they've shaken off that early loss. They're continuing to roll. Mizzou, they acquitted themselves well in this game. They got punished for this loss in the polls far less than Oregon got punished for losing to a higher-ranked team. Riddle me that one, please.
Also at home,
right. But, I think Mizzou, if all you've got on your resume is a 3-point loss at home to Alabama, fine. I mean, the one thing that concerns you there is they really haven't beaten anybody. So
no, yeah. I mean, they look good. I mean, they went toe-to-toe. I was impressed with Missouri because you didn't know what to really expect. I didn't really watch a lot of them this year. Penn State transfer, Pribula, whatever I say his last name.
Pribula
had a tough game. Those 2 picks were brutal. One was really bad. Yeah. But I mean, Alabama seems like they've gotten the map pretty well since that Florida State. Now it's their 3rd ranked win now in as many weeks. So, and they look like they're full steam ahead this season now.
Last one I'll hit. USC 31, Michigan 13. Here's the thing. Impressive win for USC. We've been pretty high on USC, relatively speaking, at least their offense. This game really brought me back, though, to something that I've had in the back of my head for a while, which is I don't think Michigan's actually that good, Matt. And they looked outclassed this game. This is exactly what happened to them against Oklahoma, and I don't think it's any coincidence that they scored the same number of points in this game that they scored against Oklahoma. They are living off of a 3-point win at Nebraska right now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, what is fortunate for – what's going to be fascinating is that Michigan has this game against Washington coming up this week. I really like Washington. I actually think they're playing pretty well. I think they've got a lot of offensive firepower. And they remind me a bit of they're like USC, like diet USC, in terms of how they're put together. If Washington wins that game, and now you got Michigan sitting at 3 losses on the season, it completely changes the lens through which you view the Wolverines.
Oh yeah, I didn't find USC terribly impressive, but still they won the game at home, 1-18. That's going to look good for the pollsters. They're 5-1, and we'll talk about this later. They play Notre Dame this week, so certainly their chance to put another notch on their belt. But yeah, Michigan seems like they're still stuck in the mud with their offense, and the message boards are starting to get loud about the head coach a little bit now, real quickly.
What's Sharon Moore's buyout?
Does he have one? I don't know.
I'm not even totally sure at this point. Hilarious. But No, it's going to be interesting because again with Michigan, they have an interesting run out in terms of what they get the rest of the season, because they get past that Washington game and they're at Michigan State, they've got Purdue, they're at Northwestern, they're at Maryland. And Maryland, by the way, October has struck for Maryland. I think you could say they lose at home again this week to Nebraska, and then they get Ohio State. Michigan does at the end of the year. You can't keep hanging your hat on the same thing over and over again, because at some point the hat rack disappears. And I kind of get the sense that that's what's going to happen this year with that Ohio State game.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to imagine a 7-5 Michigan team. Like what happens at that point? That's one where stuff changes quickly. So something to think about.
Yeah, especially if Indiana happens to be like 11-1 or 12-0 or something. Like we can't do this again. Yeah. I agree.
So anyway, let's go to the merit poll. We'll talk about what we saw. I will mildly apologize to USC, as I did not have them in my top 20. I think upon reflection, I would put them in ahead of Nebraska and probably slot them in above Michigan. So I'd have them 19th and Michigan 20th. So I apologize to our USC fans for that. That was an oversight. I was trying to get the poll done quickly, but we can fix it. We have the technology. But we both had the same top two: Indiana number 1, Ohio State number 2. Indiana got 3 first-place votes. They're the highest ranked that they've ever been in program history this week. So, hats off to them in terms of things. And again, we talked about it. They have the best win in college football right now for this season.
Yep. No, I went back and forth, but I kept going back to Indiana has the 2 best wins between the two. They both have a common opponent, which Indiana won by a lot more than Ohio State. That was my deciding factor. This is not biased towards Indiana. It just feels like that they have the best wins of the season, a little better than Ohio State, and that's why I went Indiana won Ohio State too.
Yeah, I mean, people are ranking Ohio State ahead of Indiana in the AP poll because Ohio State was already there, and people have an impression that Ohio State is better than Indiana, and I think that's fair. I'm not going to argue that until Indiana beats Ohio State, maybe in the Big Ten title game. We'll see what happens there. But if you took the names off and just looked at the resumes, Indiana's got a more impressive resume right now than Ohio State does, and I think that's to me the deciding factor. Miami and Texas A&M, I had them in 3 and 4. You had them in 4 and 3. They're very interchangeable. I will say, I think ranking Ohio State above Indiana in the regular poll is understandable. I don't see the argument for Miami at this point because, again, you have a 3-point win at home against Notre Dame. You've got a good win against a fringe top 25 team in USF, and you've now got the same win that Pitt has, essentially, against Florida State. And again, we've talked about our concerns with Miami. What I find fascinating, because the merit poll also takes into account power rankings and where teams are at. Ohio State's first in FPI, Indiana's second in FPI, Miami's 8th in FPI. That should be concerning if you're Miami. You go to S&P Plus, Miami's 15th in S&P Plus. Like there's some statistical noise with the Hurricanes that should be a little bit concerning. I don't think there's any question, though, that Texas A&M, with what they've accomplished, certainly deserves to be up there. And we both have Alabama up in the upper reaches as well. I think they deserve to be there also. Georgia, Oregon, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Utah rounds out my top 10. You had Texas Tech, Georgia, Oregon, Georgia Tech, and Ole Miss. And you go down the rest of the list, not a whole lot of disagreement other than the USC thing. Anything else that sticks out for you in the merit poll this week?
No, I mean, Virginia's obviously had a bye, but they've earned where they've earned where they're at. I put Washington in there for the first time. Are they not getting the same credit that other SEC teams are getting? They're 5-1. Their only loss is to a really good Ohio State team, and I had to put USF in there. I had 3 SEC teams behind them. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm putting USF in there. They blew out North Texas at North Texas. They've been the best group of 5 team. They deserve a spot this week. So that's why I went with USF there.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to parse what wins are actually good. I think we're starting to get some dialing in of who's actually good and who's not. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's going to be fascinating here over this next 3 or 4 weeks as we lead into the first college football playoff selection show.
Yep.
And who actually, I mean, this is where I really try to bring in the statistical analyses that you get out of FPI and look at who's playing well outside of the other stats that are happening. I'm not sure. We're gonna get some answers. We're gonna get some answers, obviously, with games coming up this week, and I think especially the following week. But it's a big jumbled mess right now, and there's just not a lot of teams that I feel 100% confident in. And it's weird because I think you could say the two teams that for me at least, the two teams I feel most confident in are both in the Big Ten, and it's purely based upon like their level of play, particularly their level of defensive play. That's the thing that is missing in a lot of the resumes of even the SEC teams, where outside of Texas, who only has their defense to hang their hat on, most of the defenses in the SEC they're good, but they haven't been elite. And that I'm really fascinated to see how that plays out down the stretch.
Well, it's going to play out now. We're now in the middle of October. They're all going to start playing each other. So all these teams that are 5-1, they have a lot of 5-1 teams right now. If you look at their set, and there's they're all going to keep playing each other. We're going to start seeing some of it play out over the next 2 weeks. We have a really big week here in week 8 with a lot of LI teams playing each other schedule-wise. So
let's dive into it. The games coming up this week.
Starts tomorrow.
Well, I know, and this is this thing where like we have 40 days where football's every day except one day. I think. It's delightful. I mean, sign me up for that, please. But let's jump ahead to Friday. A couple of games that have really got my eye in this. Well, actually, 3. One just purely for the lulls. North Carolina has to travel across the country to Cal. And Cal is desperately looking for anything to hang their hat on as a program, and to see the sinking ship that is Bill Belichick's North Carolina Tar Heels coming in. Cal is a 10.5-point favorite in this game. Who would have thought that at the beginning of this season?
Nobody. Right? I mean, this is one of those games. If 10:30 is pretty late, but I'll at least check in on a Friday night. But yeah, I'm curious to see what North Carolina team shows up after the 2 weeks they've had with the bye week with Belichick and everything else. It just seems like it's a ship that's quickly sinking, and hopefully Cal can take advantage of it.
I mean, they survived all the articles. I guess what was it? One of the vice president or one of the trustees was at the press conference for Bill Belichick today to show support. Like when you're doing that, it's circle the wagon time, and that's never good 6 games into the season. Nebraska at Minnesota. Okay, Nebraska, you won a road game at Maryland. It was tougher than it should have been, but you won that game. Are you going to take the next step? And they're at Minnesota, a team that loves to underperform, nearly lost to Purdue this week. Had to pull that one out very late on. And I don't know what to make of this game at all. I could absolutely see Nebraska winning handily. I could also see Minnesota pulling a Minnesota and winning this game, no problem. This is fascinating because if Nebraska wins this game, you look down the stretch, and there's not a lot there that is really frightening now that Penn State isn't playing particularly well. Yeah, they got USC at home, but they won that game last year, and I'm fascinated to see how that plays out, all things considered, because it doesn't feel like Nebraska is a team that's really. I'm sorry, they didn't beat USC last year. That's my mistake. I was thinking of somebody else that they wanted in the last. It was Minnesota. No, I'm sorry, I was right.
They beat USC last year.
They beat USC last year. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong schedule page. But yeah, Nebraska's in a weird spot in as much as can they beat USC? That was the big question mark. But they got to pass this test at Minnesota, and that's a team that is not just going to roll over for them.
It feels like one of those like classic 14-10 Big Ten games on a Friday night in Minnesota. I mean, PJ Fleck has not hit his 8-win quota for the year yet, so that's certainly still in play, it seems like, right? But you're right, to your point, this is a big game for Matt Rhule and Nebraska. If they could win this one on the road, you assume they can beat Northwestern. That puts them 7-1. If USC, then we'll talk about them here in a second, can beat Notre Dame. Then you have that spot. Maybe we're going to be for the Big Ten, that 4th spot.
Yeah. Also, Louisville at Miami on Friday night. 13.5-point favorites are the Hurricanes. Off a bye, I know. But Louisville's not a bad team. Louisville is a live team. And we've talked all year, like the big question mark for the Hurricanes is not how they play in the big games, but how they play in the mid games. And this is one of those like classic trap games We'll see how they navigate it. I'll probably still pick them to win this one, but I would keep my eye on it,
Yep.
Sorry.
No, I have nothing to add. I mean, I expect Miami to win, but Louisville has been frisky all year. I mean, they played Virginia. Obviously, maybe should have won that game, but they're gonna be a tough out all year for whoever they have to play.
On Saturday, Vanderbilt hosts LSU. Somebody's dream
favored Vanderbilt.
Yeah, somebody's dream dies this week.
Yes.
Either Vanderbilt loses a home game and that knocks them out of playoff contention, which, I mean, a 9 or 10 win season is still beyond the wildest in Vandy, or LSU gets knocked out of contention, and that's where Brian Kelly starts looking for work somewhere else.
Yeah, this is LSU's last stand. I know they have games they can still win here, games to get them in the playoff, but they have to win this game. I mean, it's to be taken seriously. They still have their only really big test now. They lost at Ole Miss, but they got to go home at A&M, at Bama the next 2, and then finish with Oklahoma. So they have a 3-game stretch here. This has to be a win. Yeah. I can't see them beating both Texas A&M and Bama.
And they did not look impressive in beating South Carolina at all.
Their defense is fine. Like, they've been fine, but their offense is just
Other games of note, we mentioned Washington at Michigan earlier. Georgia Tech at Duke. Again, Duke has shown that they can be frisky this season, and Georgia Tech has. I mean, they've done everything that you would ask them to do. It's no criticism of them, but you also have to admit, like, when you look at the stats, they don't look like a team that's going to be able to sustain. Because of, like, the power rankings rarely ever lie. They're 35th in FPI, and that's up 7 spots from where they were last week in FPI. That's a huge delta between what they are ranked, which is 12th in the polls, to be 35th in FPI. You're kind of getting along by the skin of your teeth. And I'll note this: we said the exact same thing about Iowa State, and Iowa State finally stepped on a rake last week. So
this is an interesting one too, because interesting if they can get by Duke, that puts them 7-0. Then you think Q's 8-0. I mean, you're right; their numbers are not great, but you still, as long as you're winning, that's all that really matters at this point for them, right? They're just trying to get the ACC championship game. They're 3-0 in the conference, but yeah, this is a tough one. Duke has played really well, and I expect kind of Duke to win this game. So, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I expect Duke to win this game.
The big game in the SEC: Ole Miss at Georgia. We didn't talk about Georgia Auburn when we were going through what happened last week. I mean, I'll just say this: I don't know enough about the intricacies of the politics of SEC officiating and the way the conference handles things. I can talk with expertise about the Big Ten, but the SEC I leave to the experts. All I'll say is multiple podcasts pointed out that this is now 2 games that Auburn has essentially had stolen from them because of horrific officiating. In this one, it goes from being Auburn up 17-0 at half to Georgia getting the ball on the goal line on a fumble that sure looked a lot like a touchdown. And then an additional problem later where Kirby Smart essentially, calls a timeout and then claims he didn't call a timeout. I mean, it just looked really bad. And you take all that and you look at Georgia, and you could feel bad for Auburn, but you look at Georgia and you're like, it's a team that almost lost at Tennessee. It's a team that lost at home to Alabama. They're 9th in the country. They struggle at Auburn. They needed that help to get over the hump. Now they got to play an Ole Miss team that didn't play that particularly well this last week. If Georgia loses this game, it really puts them behind several other teams in the SEC pecking order.
Yeah, Georgia at home. So I was at this game 2 years ago, and they played Ole Miss, and they won 56-20 or something like that. And it was never a game, right? Everyone thought Ole Miss would finally challenge them. That's a different Georgia team. That's a long time ago, different era. But I think this Georgia team's better, or not better than that team. I think they're better than Ole Miss. After watching Ole Miss, and I ranked them, I did number 1 3 weeks ago because I thought they were playing well. But I think I'm really curious how they get off the map after last week. And maybe it was a look-ahead spot, but to your point, this is a must-win for Georgia. They can't lose this game. They have to win this game. Ole Miss has a little wiggle room because they don't have a loss yet.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the one loss, obviously, to Alabama. And what I mean pecking order, what I'm trying to get across is, like, the fact that Georgia's a one-loss team and is 9th in the country, and as an SEC, as Georgia, as an SEC team with a 3-point loss at home, like there is clearly some uneasiness in the eyes of the voters about how good this team actually is. What they benefit from is that if they can get past this game and get a win, it's pretty smooth sailing the rest of the way. They get Texas at home. They got Florida in Jacksonville. They're at Mississippi State. They've got Georgia Tech in the season ender there, and they should win all of those games. I think Texas might be a little bit of a question mark depending on if they can keep their offense going, but I'm fascinated to see where they land, because I think if you're being honest about who you think the best teams in the SEC actually are, I don't know if people are really naming Georgia right now as one of those, and maybe that's unfair. On the flip side, for Ole Miss, like you've got a lot of things have been set up, I think, in your favor in terms of the way this season has gone so far this year. You've got the win at home against LSU, and even that game that you've got coming, like you basically got 2 tough games left on your schedule.
It broke right for them.
It did. You're at Georgia, so if you win this game, you can afford to lose at Oklahoma, and you're still totally fine. So huge game for both of these teams, just in terms of how they position themselves down the stretch, and maybe both of them end up turning out fine because they don't have 4 or 5 ranked teams left on their schedule like some of the other teams in the conference do.
Yeah, no, you're right. Unlike who we'll probably talk about here in a second, South Carolina's not in the mix anymore, but like a Missouri or LSU, for example, we just talked about, I think they're positioned well to probably at least go 6-2 in the conference, 10-2 overall. So yeah, they're in a really good spot, but you win this game and you're in a really good spot to maybe even get to Atlanta for the SEC championship game.
Yeah. Texas Tech at Arizona State, 4:00 kick. Texas Tech has looked really good. I don't think there's any question of that. And they've been impressive in terms of what they've done. The Utah win looks more impressive every week now, I think. And Utah has certainly righted the ship. Big win at West Virginia, big win at home against Arizona State this last week. And they've got a huge game coming up, which we'll talk about here a little bit later. But Texas Tech is a really curious case because they've leapt into the top 10. They don't have a lot that's difficult left on their schedule. They've got BYU at home, but this game with Arizona State coming off an embarrassing loss, Arizona State, we know, is a pretty good team. They're not as good as they were last year, but this is a game, if Texas Tech can get by it, you really have to like their chances, not just for the Big Ten title game, but it feels like barring a real catastrophe down the stretch, they may just be in great shape for a playoff bid, period.
Yeah, they have steamrolled everybody. I watched a little bit of that Kansas game. I thought that'd be really close, and they just never let up in that game. So this is, like you said, tricky spot. Arizona State come out with a really bad loss, but after that, Oklahoma State, Kansas State's been not so. They've been really bad. But that BYU game sets up as maybe a playing game for the Big 12 championship game. Cincinnati still 3-0. Utah, they've already beat Utah, so they have that tiebreaker there. You're right. This sets up really well. Maybe this helps Texas Tech if they have to lose a game for the Big 12 to get 2 teams in. Maybe, as we're still unsure where the Big 10 will allow with that 4th team.
Tennessee at Alabama. Matt, are we sure Tennessee is good?
I don't know anymore. I don't know.
I just want to note, Tennessee's best win right now is a 7-point win at Mississippi State. That is their best win. Maybe you could say Syracuse on a neutral field when Syracuse was whole, I guess.
The quarterback, yeah.
But, that's not going to look like a great win at the end of the season from a metrics perspective.
No, and the schedule does not lend themselves to opportunities at this point. They needed that Georgia game, and they had it. If you remember, they missed the field goal, right? If they had it. But now this is a tough one. If this was at home, maybe a better shot, but Bama's really starting to play. I know they only won by 3 at Missouri, but Bama's looked really good since that opening loss, and it's just not set up well for them to not finish worse than 9-3 at this point, in my opinion. Maybe they will win one of these games, but it does not look good for them to move to be in the upper echelon at this point.
Well, even if they lose this game, they could beat Kentucky, New Mexico State, Florida. The 2 games that are fascinating, though, is they get Oklahoma at home.
Vanderbilt at home.
And then Vanderbilt at home. I'm not sure if Oklahoma is really a contender, and we don't know if Vanderbilt's going to be a contender. So even if you lose this game and finish 10-2 and you're Tennessee and your best win is a home win against Oklahoma that isn't playing particularly well, I don't know if that's a great playoff case.
Well, Oklahoma's going to have their opportunities. So I mean, they still have Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri. So they're gonna certainly play themselves in or out of this. But to your point,
I don't know that I'd favor Oklahoma in any of those games.
I wouldn't right now. If Material's not healthy, yeah, no, there's no chance. But
even if he is,
yeah, I'm just saying, like, they have the opportunity more than I would say. Like a 10-2 Sooners team is going to be ahead of the 10-2 Tennessee team, right?
Yeah. Well, and I don't think Tennessee gets to 10-2 unless they beat Oklahoma. At which point Oklahoma's not.
Yeah.
So, this is the logic we have to deal with at this point. USC at Notre Dame, 7:30 kick on Saturday night. This game is USC's season. If they don't win this game, I don't think
Notre Dame season 2.
It is. This is maybe the most impactful game so far we have on the schedule in terms of two teams whose seasons are going to be completely dictated the rest of the way by what happens in it. Because, you look at USC, and it's a little unfair in as much as they only have a 2-point loss at Illinois, which looks really good. But the flip side of it is I don't know that even a USC team that goes to Oregon and wins, which seems unlikely, is able to overcome losing at Notre Dame and losing at Illinois, given that they really won't have beaten anybody else on their schedule at that point. Maybe it puts them in position, but it would require them getting to the Big Ten title game, which is a really tough route for them, given everything else that's going on in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, 100%, like everything you said. And then from like the Notre Dame standpoint, like they have those 2 losses at the beginning of the season against, we both have them in the top 5, and they've blown out the last 4 teams. They looked really good the last 2 weeks doing it. Again, it's NC State and Boise State, so take it for what it's worth. But they don't really have anything after this. This is it. I mean, you can say undefeated Navy, sure, okay. But really, and Pitt looks better, I guess, but they're still not ranked. This is their opportunity to win a game against a ranked team. The problem is they win the game, USC maybe comes unranked. So they're in a tough spot that we said earlier on. They're going to have to keep winning. They have to go 10-2. This is a must-win more for them. But USC has to win the game too. So it's probably a must-win for both.
Yeah. Last game that I wanted to spotlight, it's the Holy War, Utah, BYU. Always a fun watch. Not as late of a game as I was worried it was going to be. It's an 8 p.m. kick, so we got that going for us. But, by the way, the get-in price, this might be the highest get-in price of any game. I'm checking right now, $283. Ole Miss, Georgia is only at $206. And I think those are the only $200 games that you've got right now in terms of get-in price. But this one will be worth the price of admission, I think, for a variety of reasons. You don't always get seasons where both these teams are good. Utah, they've only got the 1 loss, but it was a big loss to Texas Tech. And I don't see a route to get to the Big 12 title game if they don't win the game.
They have to win the game. Yeah.
At BYU. BYU hasn't lost yet. They've played essentially nobody, however. They do get some credit for winning at Colorado, which they did barely. But they've still got to go to Texas Tech. So they also really can't afford to lose this game. They've got they don't have the pad, I think, with the rest of their schedule to be able to sustain that. And you consider they still have to go to Iowa State. They have to go to Cincinnati. I don't know that you can count on them winning those games necessarily. But right now in this moment, this is a huge leverage game for both of these teams.
This is a game I want to go to one of these years. I mean, it just seems like an awesome atmosphere. I'd probably rather go to Utah, I think, than BYU. I want to go to both, but certainly Utah. But certainly this is a big game. You see if Utah can get off the mat. They lost to Texas Tech earlier in the year. This is a really big game for them to have the opportunity. Kudos to Big Noon for picking this game. I know the game's not at noon, but they're actually going to Provo for this game. So it's nice that we're having this big game in the Big 12. I really hope. I really want to see BYU. I haven't really watched them a lot this year. I'm going to tune in to see BYU play a little more this weekend to see what they look like. But hopefully we have a really good game between these two teams. You're right. They have not been ranked at the same time, I think, in quite a few years. So looking forward to it.
Anything else you wanted to spotlight?
That Lafayette Oregon State game, that 10 o'clock game on the CW, getting priced $7. You should have stayed out there for the weekend. To go to
I know. Felt like I missed an opportunity. I do feel bad for Oregon State, man.
Yeah.
Your heart goes out to that school in particular because they've always been a fun kind of extra
plucky story. Yeah.
Plucky story. I think that's the best way of putting it. And I mean, they talk about just being dead in the water right now. I don't know what the route back for them is at this point. It's a shame. But in fact, I think I saw one of the prediction services actually has Lafayette winning that game, and that's not a spot you want to be in. So
No.
Yeah. Anyway, that'll wrap it up for us here on Football Weather, as we appreciate, as always, you folks joining us. And ultimately, going to be a ton more to talk about over the course of these next few weeks as we lead into that first college football playoff selection show. So stick with us as we bring you all of that. Matt, as always, a pleasure. Look forward to talking to you next week.
See ya.
We'll see you folks out on the football weather. So long, everybody.